Um, I'm super excited to be talking to the team from Omnipresent today. They have adopted a dynamic books model for their SDR team. We'll be talking a lot more about what that even means here in just a minute. But to kick it off, I'm Hayes. I'm the founder and CEO here at GradientWorks, and one of the things that we're focused on is helping teams adopt a new form of territory design called dynamic books. And Omnipresent has done a fantastic job of this. And so I'd love to introduce Marcos and Will from that team. And Marcos, why don't you kick it off with a quick intro?
Yeah, I'm our senior RevOps manager here at Omnipresent. Been with the company just a little over 18 months, which for some of you watching might not be that long, but in Omnipresent terms, that's pretty long. That's ancient, as we're a fairly new company in the market in terms of years. And on a day-to-day basis, I'm trying to solve a lot of strategic problems that we have at Omnipresent, particularly with our go-to-market function, and what accounts that our team is reaching out to is one of those problems that we look to solve for.
Awesome. Okay, appreciate that, Marcos. And then Will, mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Will. I'm based in the UK. I've been with Omnipresent for nearly a year. So I guess I am kind of considered ancient as well. So I spend a lot of my time with the SDR team. This has grown quite a lot since I've been here. And I'm just been helping support them, basically using the dynamic books and book builder on a daily basis just to help the company grow, and especially the SDR team reach their goals.
Awesome. Well, I want to just level set here. Overall, what I hope we can do with this conversation is first just take a minute to introduce the whole idea of dynamic books, and then from there, Marcos and Will, I'd love to hear just a little bit more about the team that you've deployed it with, and how you're thinking about how you kind of arrived at that type of solution. We'll talk a little bit about the details, the nitty-gritty of actually doing this, and then we can talk about the future and where you all are headed. Just to give everybody a quick overview of the concepts behind dynamic books, when you think about how many companies do territory design, often they're probably starting right about now in their annual planning process. They're carving up the world into geographic territories or named account lists, or maybe even verticals, doing a lot of back and forth with spreadsheets and trying to figure out who's going to get what accounts. And at the end of the day, you're going to end up with static sets of accounts. So you're going to assign your reps to those static sets of accounts and start the clock, and hope you're able to generate the right amount of revenue. Dynamic books really turns that model on its head, and it's especially relevant for SDR teams, and we'll talk about this in a minute. But the idea behind dynamic books is, instead of your reps getting assigned to a static patch somewhere in the world, your reps are working a dynamic list of accounts that changes over time based on rep capacity and based on prospect lifecycle. So that's the idea behind dynamic books. And there's some really interesting parts of the process, including both proactive elements of distributing accounts on a regular basis to reps who have a particular kind of target book, as well as retrieving those accounts from those reps if, for example, those accounts aren't being worked any longer. And then there's the kind of reactive components to how you integrate this with inbounds and things like that. So long story short, what's super exciting about what Marcos and Will have been involved in is deploying this with their SDR team. And I think with Omnipresent, as a very much a global company, they have a really kind of unique insight into how to use dynamic books along with a bit of a geographic flavor, because they have reps that are kind of all over the world. So I just wanted to give people that kind of visibility into how the dynamic books process works at the top here. and then talk about with Marcos and Will kind of why they decided to choose that with their SDR team. So I'll start out with you, Marcos, just at a high level. If you don't mind sharing maybe a little bit about about the team, kind of how they're deployed around the world, those sorts of things, so that everybody has a sense of what the team's like, and then we can talk about how we actually got to the point of dynamic books.
Yeah. So, like Hayes mentioned, we are a global company, and while we're fairly new, we're a fairly large company at this stage. We're almost at a little bit over 400 employees, and part of that is a large SDR function that expands to a variety of countries across the globe. So we have an SDR team that I believe we're around 30 SDRs now, almost. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, Will.
37, I think it is now.
37, there you go. And we have them based in Americas, APAC, EMEA territories, and country-wise, we have them in Singapore, we have them in Australia, we have them in the UK, Sweden, Spain, Germany, United States, all over the United States. We've got a few of them across all time zones. So it's really a large team that are targeting different companies in different regions. And so we needed to, from a strategy standpoint, originally we were having kind of a free-for-all Wild West approach, where it was a land grab amongst the SDRs. If you have it, it's yours. And that's just not scalable. And so we really needed something that could support a way for us to give the reps the right accounts, the right people to kind of go out and reach out to, and make sure that they're speaking to people that are actually in their native language as well. So while that's another area that we were looking at, because not all of our SDRs, English is not their first language, and so while they can speak it, it might be easier to sell Omnipresent in their native tongue, and so making sure that we're putting them in the best position to kind of support success that way. And so, yeah.
Got it. One of the things that I also think is unique about Omnipresent is, as I see it, you all have just an absolute massive addressable market. There's just a ridiculous number of companies that could benefit from what you all do. And it might be helpful, Marcos, just to, again, get your perspective on that when you, and maybe share a little bit about just at high level what Omnipresent does, and how that translates into how you think about the addressable market. Because the whole goal of any type of territory design, right, is to take your quota capacity and figure out how to deploy it effectively in your market, right? And so that's at the highest level what the whole job is. So I think we've got a sense of how many reps you've got, and it sounds like it's a growing number. But let's talk about the market side. How large is that market, and what does that mean for how you start thinking about deploying quota capacity there?
Yeah, I probably should have started with what our business does in my introduction. Sure. That would have been great, right?
Oh, you're on the ops side and not the sales side.
Yeah, I'm not the marketing guy. Yeah, so I mean, Omnipresent, essentially we are well, I'll use our slogan to kind of describe us. It's employ anyone, anywhere, anytime. And so what that means is we started out as an employee of record company, where we helped enable businesses who were looking to hire remote workers in countries that they might not have a legal entity in. And we came in and kind of were able to support that business. And we've kind of expanded it since COVID, as companies are looking to go remote more, or have remote be an option when they're hiring. That's kind of what we've done, and we've expanded that business to other ways of employing people. Putting employees directly on payroll, just payroll. Putting employees, as contractors, things of that nature. And so, the goal is to kind of enable businesses to remove the shackles that come with hiring, and not just hiring within their country of origin, but hiring across the globe. And for us, that addressable market kind of, when you do that, that addressable market is kind of endless, and it's such a new area of business that's being done, particularly since COVID. And I think for us, we're still kind of wrapping our heads around what that is, and I think investors are as well. And it's a large it's a large addressable market. I think kind of investment across this space has kind of shown that. What that ends up being, I'm not entirely sure, but our forecasts are for that is pretty high.
Right. And so, when you have such a large market, right, I think companies often are operating in sort of one of two modes. They either have a kind of scarcity mode where maybe the market relative to their quota capacity isn't all that big. And so it's really about being very careful about, like, you've got this account, right? And then there's the other mode where the market is very large and your quota capacity relative to that is fairly small. And so that's where you all are. And so it sounds like when you talk about the kind of Wild West scenario of you deploy a rep and it's sort of up to them to figure out how to go after. I'd love to hear, maybe Will, you have some insight into this, in that early initial model, what were some of the challenges that you were seeing, and some of the things that SDRs were struggling with in that kind of Wild West approach?
So basically lots of the reps will just hoard accounts. So people are adding, I don't know, accounts to Salesforce, or they'd find contacts that have interacted with something on LinkedIn, or there's a news article or something, and they want to bring them in, but they can't because it belongs to, let's say, someone else, but they haven't interacted with this account for months. So it's okay, you have to ask them if I can change it over, and obviously the rep is probably going to say no, because why are you asking?
Right.
And then they can go after it. So like, we do have this big, let's say, audience, but the SDRs are a little bit specific in who they want to go after, or the types of people that they want to go after. That this quickly does shrink. And then the accounts, you could say, some of them are just not worked as well. So they have the account, one rep will send an email, connect with them on LinkedIn, and it's magically their one, and it just sits there.
Right.
So there's lots of aspects to this side. But yeah, I'd say that's one of the main issues that we did have, like, early on. But yeah, I can explain further on is like what Book Builder did just to help with that.
Yeah. Well, before we jump into kind of the fix for that, I'd be interested to hear, there's operationally, there's challenges in terms of, like, our reps touching accounts, those types of things. But then I have to imagine, like, there was some rep frustration that kind of boiled over. Like, what was that like for the reps to be in that kind of model?
So I think there was frustration, like from my side and from their side, because they can see the good accounts not being worked. And then from my side, I didn't really have a framework to take them back, because I could say, okay, I'll take them back, but then the SDR could complain and say, why are we taking it? Like, I was going to work on it. So there was no rules of engagement there. So the frustration was there, and like the people who've been there longest benefited the most. So you have new reps, they come in and they are searching for new accounts, and they are, like, heavily active on LinkedIn or these news websites, so they can see, okay, I don't know, Spotify have gone remote, but it belongs to someone. So there is that frustration. And there's also, just to touch upon, like, Marcos's area of having language specific reps. So if they are looking to go or sell to someone within their own country, we can see that it is easier for them to do that. And someone who's not from that country may not understand like how to sell. So there's like some frustrations from that side as well.
Okay. So, one thing I'm a little bit curious about with that is, uh, you know, as you started to make this change, one of the core things to know here is if you're gonna shape the accounts that reps are working, is really understanding, what your ideal customer profile is, what any kind of signals that you might have for whether or not it's an account that you should be working at a given point in time. Um, in the early days of the sort of Wild West model, it sounds like you really were relying on the reps to kind of maybe take a high level ICP and sort of apply that and then sort of figure out the signals aspects themselves. Was that how much guidance did the reps have about, where and how to prospect in terms of who they should be reaching out to?
So when it came to, let's say, finding the best accounts to match, we were working on account scoring. So this is heavily used within Omnipresent, especially with like the dynamic books moving forward. So account scoring, we looked at all of the customers that we have within Omnipresent, looked to see the trends between them. And then with these trends, they were given a score rating at the very beginning. So it was, let's say, very basic. And I think this was the best way to do it. So you start basic and then you can add more and more things onto that. So we just started with the industry, the employee size. And then now we have a lot more, let's say, going on within that. And then we are constantly getting feedback from the reps of, okay, this is a good account, this is a bad account. And then we want to know why. Well, this is why I'm asking them why. So we're able to build up some kind of profile, and we can see that these profiles are different depending on the geographies. So it's not like the same company within Spain, or for a rep, an SDR in Spain is a good company for an SDR in France. So we're at the stage where we can see the slight differences and like the sweet spots that we have. And that's all being built into the account scoring. So that's how we were building the books up, or like the ideal profile that the reps are going after. But I feel this is constantly evolving. And there's no limit to what you can add into the scoring. So we have now such things as the company employee growth, or the intent, which we take from Zoom Info, and this is all built in as well. So I think it just depends, like having all of these feedback channels between the different stakeholders. And then so it's very good to hear from the SDRs that they're happy with the leads.
Right.
But then on the other side, it's also quite good to see or hear that they're not happy, because they're very open to giving you feedback, which is useful.
Well, and so so let's talk about the transition from this kind of Wild West model to something more structured with dynamic books, where you're managing those reps books proactively. I'm curious about, and maybe Marcos, you could shed some light on this. Was there a point in time where you all, or a kind of a triggering event where you're like, okay, we can't continue to have this type of Wild West model? Like, I'm curious, was there like a certain number of reps, or was there a certain, like, was it results oriented? What triggered the idea of like, okay, we got to change?
It was more like 1,000 paper cuts that kind of led
Right.
to us having to make that decision. It was always something we knew we would have to go to, but we didn't have, we didn't have to immediately because of the size of the team. We only had, when I joined, we had 2 SDRs, and within a few months, those SDRs were in other areas of the company, promoted into AE roles and as such. And so we hadn't scaled to a point where we needed to implement that. But then as we started to evolve our sales team to be more territory oriented, we've broken out our sales team in EMEA, Americas, APAC fashion, and then as well as to be targeted in the types of businesses those AEs would be talking to. So we have a corporate enterprise level team. We have a high growth team, that deals with high growth startups and things of that nature. We needed a way to have our SDRs not focus on just one segment of our business. We didn't want SDRs to say, okay, I'm just going to go after EMEA mid-market business and then have 20 SDRs go after that because there's a bunch of them. No, we needed SDRs to be able to reach out to not only that mid-market level, but we needed them to reach out to high growth. We needed to reach out to corporate, and so that our sales reps are fed by them in their efforts. So that's kind of where if I was pinpointing any triggering event, it would probably be the restructuring of our sales team that kind of focused that point. That and then when I said 1,000 paper cuts, we were having problems with, as Will already mentioned, with reps hoarding accounts. So we were starting to get a lot of requests from SDRs and their managers. Hey, can we, as operations people, we kind of hold the power to change ownership within Salesforce from one account to the other. And we were getting a lot of requests daily on, hey, can we switch this out of so-and-so's name? They haven't reached out to them in so many months. Or, hey, can we do any of that? And so we needed a way to kind of take those back from reps, while also giving them the opportunity to, do some activity on it in some fashion, since they, to reward their efforts of prospecting. But we were finding a lot of that. We'd get someone say, hey, there's a press release, or we noticed this company is doing a lot of hiring. Can we reach out to them? And so to save time from Will and myself and the rest of the team's daily lives, we needed a way to kind of automate that and kind of do a better way of distributing in fairness to the whole team.
Right. So, well, I know you were one of the primary folks internally who drove the implementation of this shift and everything. So I'd love to hear the story. You have 1,000 paper cuts, and it's like, okay, we need to make a change. So walk us through, like, what did it actually look like? Actually, before you walk us through what it looked like to make the change, if you could just share kind of a sort of day in the life or week in the life of like how you're kind of managing this process now, so that people have a good understanding of what it looks like to do the dynamic books model, and then maybe share kind of how you got there.
Yeah. Okay. So with the dynamic books, I basically just go in once a week on a Monday. We've built the target books up. So first we have the overall like enrollment, so what accounts are considered fair game that can be distributed. And then I've built target books for each particular region. And then I've added the reps in there. And then come Monday, I just distribute 50 new accounts out, and it's done. I get like the feedback from the reps pretty instantly. And then if I need to tweak something, I tweak it. If not, we just go again. And then occasionally, so we have, particularly towards the end of quarter, we have special campaigns that we're using with dynamic books. So we could look at opportunities that have closed lost, but they had a reason that say it was a good fit, but no timeline. So we just send this out, and we aim just to get a little uptick in opportunities at the end of the quarter. Or if it is a particularly the month is not going too well, we can have different types of campaigns. So we use Zoom Info, so we can collect scoops, and we can see the companies that have recently got funding. I just download this based on the regions that we're targeting, and then again I just send it out. Everything's tagged, I can see how it works. And then we have all the reporting. So to be honest, I probably spend overall talking with managers as well about 3 hours a week. But the rewards are there. We can see the increase in opportunities. and the other benefits as well. But I guess we can get into that like later. But yeah, so at the moment, it's easy. I think KG saw before in Marcos what it was like. So when we decided to make this change, I probably had a million Excel sheets and I was downloading the account IDs of accounts that haven't been touched for 90 days. And then I was changing it to a default user, tagging them, and then I would download it again based on the countries and then just distribute them out to the reps. And I spent hours and hours doing this. And then especially with the account scoring. So I would look at this, but we didn't have other ranking criteria as well. So we had this, I was doing this, and then the worst thing was with a rep didn't like their leads. It was like, oh, okay, I'll do this again. But
Right.
other than that, like that's what I was doing, like all of these Excel spreadsheets. And then I believe this is when I met you, Hayes. And then we started working on the, let's say, very first version of Book Builder. So we were going for it. I don't know what you thought about all of my Excel spreadsheets, but even with this first version, it was a lot easier to do this. And we were going for it, and then we could see like the uptick in like the leads that were going out, and also the like the reps were working on them, so they were more excited about it when it was just automated, I would say, just because we could have a little bit more control over the quality. And then
one of the things as you sort of described the day in the life there, I appreciate the sort of like pre book builder as you were trying to implement the dynamic model with spreadsheets, and then as you adopted Gradient Works, it eased that quite a bit. One of the things as you were talking about the sort of week in the life of managing this, one thing you didn't mention, and I'm not sure how much or how you all are thinking about this, is the process of retrieving accounts from reps that aren't being worked. And so I'm kind of curious about how you all have addressed that aspect. Are you proactively retrieving those accounts so they can be redistributed now? And if so, what kind of cycle does that happen on?
Yeah, so before, like I was retrieving using the Excel spreadsheet. And now again, when I'm doing like the weekly distribution, I'm also doing like the weekly retrieval of accounts. So at the moment we're doing this on a 90-day based cycle. So once we give the SDR an account, that's theirs for 3 months. So we don't want them to have like the fear that this is going to be taken away like too soon. So they have time to work it. But as soon as there's no activity for 3 months, we take this, and then the account will sit there. So with the dynamic books, when we retrieve the account, we are tagging this with we call it a reap date. So that's the date that the account's taken back. And the idea is that will sit and that will rest. So we're not overworking it. We're not annoying people or contacting the same type of person over and over again. So that will sit there. And then we will look to get marketing just to, let's say, nurture them. They've always got Omnipresent back in their like in the back of their heads.
Right.
And then when it does come to distribute into the rep, it's there. Like we could say maybe they know us. And then hopefully it's a little bit of an easier win for the SDR.
Right.
So we've got that. But we've also got the triggers that you've helped us with as well. So just outside of like dynamic books. So for example, if I don't know, someone does visit the website or whatever, then it automatically just goes straight out to the rep. And then they can start working this before the actual distribution. So the account can sit there. If they have a critical event, then we push this out earlier, just so it's not sitting there. So there's kind of this balance between, okay, they're being nurtured, but we're also ready just to work them.
Mhm. And I think that's that's one of the crucial things about the dynamic books model, right? Is taking that prospect life cycle into account so that you have the right resources at your company, addressing the prospect based on where they are in the life cycle. You have the reps who are doing active outreach, and then if you're not getting anywhere there, you can pause that and allow marketing to take over. And then, as that generates action from the reps, they can, or from the prospect, then you can get that back out to a rep at the right time. I want to go back to one of the key parts of that life cycle aspect, right, is that accounts will move out of reps' names. And one of the things that's, as I share dynamic books as a model with folks, one of the things that often comes up is, well, how do reps feel about that? Or what are the challenges around that? And so, Marcos, maybe you can share. I'm not sure. Maybe this is a question for Will, either one. But as you started to put a more structured process in place that says, hey, we're going to retrieve these accounts from you if they haven't been worked in 90 days. What were some of the things that you needed to do to like make sure that the reps were on board with that, make sure that you had the right rules of engagement in place? Because that's usually one of the more controversial aspects of dynamic books. I'm just kind of curious how you address that with the reps.
Yeah. You always kind of have to sell it. Being an SDR in a past life myself, you when you get some of that news, you're kind of your eyebrows raised, you're kind of up in arms a little bit. And so we knew we could get some of that from SDR. So we needed to really push, kind of spin it in a way that was positive for them and positive for the business. Because we knew their hard works and efforts is what brought that into our CRM, brought that information. And so from their perspective, they should be rewarded in some shape or fashion. But we didn't get a lot of pushback. We gave them ample time to we said, okay, we gave them a cutoff date, and we said, hey, at this point, we're going to start taking some stuff back. So you've got until this time to go through your accounts and start reaching out with what you have. And so I think that kind of gave them a good, we got a good buy-in from that part of it, where we weren't just going in and saying, hey, we're just going to take it all. We gave them ample time on that end. And then we had to sell and said, hey, listen, we're going to be able to get you things quicker. We're going to be able to get you the right things quicker in terms of the businesses that you should be reaching out to. And a lot of the mistakes and a lot of the friction that you're experiencing and having to go to your manager, having to go to the RevOps to kind of switch accounts into their names, we're kind of removing that roadblock for you. And so it was a pretty easy spin. They kind of all understood, because each one of them had experience, one of wanting to reach out to a business that maybe another SDR had already just been sitting on, and all of them had an experience of sitting on accounts. So it was kind of a give and take process, and being able to kind of tell them, hey, we're just leveling the playing field for everyone. There's not going to be any issues if you're going to be doing outreach to this business. So it kind of also created an urgency, which we really needed, of reach out to the businesses you're prospecting. If you're bringing it in, make sure that you're going to get credit for it by actually doing the activity that we expect you to do when you bring these in. So that was great. We've seen activity pick up. We've seen emails, our email volume increase. We've seen our call volume increase because of it. And we're starting to see the rewards in terms of what's getting booked for us and opportunities being created by the SDR team. I'll let Will talk a little bit more on that in terms of numbers.
I see Will looks like he wants to jump in and add some color, so I'm excited.
Yes. So there's we have one rep, and because the way we sold it, we told them the rules, yeah. So you can kind of play with them, like, why not, yeah. And we had there was one SDR who she didn't want to give up an account, and she had hundreds of touches with them. And I don't know why she latched onto it, but in the end she ended up getting a meeting with them. So but it was like touch after touch over months and months.
Mhm.
And yeah, she did it. She didn't give up. So there's kind of this motivation, like I feel this count because they seem to have a feeling like I feel this count's good and I want to work with them and close them.
Mhm.
So they do like favor them, but they keep going after them because they don't want to give them up.
Right.
And I'm sure that they look at each other's books as well, and they're like, "Oh, I can't wait until this person doesn't interact with them because there's loads of good accounts."
Right.
So there's all of this aspect to it as well, and it kind of, I don't know, gives them the push. Like as Marcos said, that
Mhm.
work it or like, you'll lose it. And then we did some calculations as well.
Mhm.
So with your calculator actually on the
Mhm.
number of accounts that they can work. And based on our numbers, it's I think 120 that they
Mhm.
could realistically fully work.
Right.
So they have more than enough accounts that are given to them.
Mhm.
So it's just they have to go after it, they work them. Um, and yeah, they seem relatively happy with the new process because their loss could be, or someone else's loss could be their gain.
Right. And I think, one of the things to be clear about, we talk about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we talk about this 90-day threshold. What we're saying is if you've gone 3 months without working the account, if you're working the account, it stays in your name. Right. So one of the things that's, I think to be clear for folks who are thinking about this model is, um, when you're thinking about the rules of engagement that you want to define for when an account is worked or when an account is not being worked, one of the things, and when it might be eligible for retrieval, things to think about are what is it ultimately the type of behavior you want to drive from the reps. We're not taking accounts away from reps just because we want to just recirculate the accounts. We're taking accounts that they're not actively working, and I think that's the important thing. So it kind of forces reps to say, I have X number of accounts in my name. Do I really believe in this account? And if I do, I'm going to keep working it, so that it turns into something. Otherwise it's going to get recirculated. So I'm curious, we're using this term like the account's been worked, right? And one thing that often comes up in these conversations with folks who are thinking about adopting dynamic books is, well, how do you track that? And what does it mean for an account to be worked? And so I'd love to hear, Will, what did you all settle on for an account being worked? Like what counts as a rep who is, actually touching an account?
Mm-hmm. So we're looking at them adding at least 2 contacts to the account.
Mm-hmm.
And there should be 12 calls and I think it's 14 emails.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we're doing this is we're just like counting the task type. So it would be a sales event or sales activity.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just count from the distribution date.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the account's taken back and we redistribute it, this is all reset.
Mm-hmm.
So we can go through and we can just count and see like how many accounts are actually being worked on their side.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that we need to look into as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just to see like how many touches or how many steps we need just to get the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then potentially we could do more accounts because we lower this. And like the threshold is lower for a worked account. So this is something that we're looking at the moment, just to see what gives us the best results.
Right. And I think that dovetails into another part of this discussion, which is, Will, you brought up the term earlier of target books, right? And so one of the things that I want to, again, just to kind of help people understand how the model works is, each role within your team would have a target book defined, like the accounts they're supposed to be working meet certain criteria, right? They have, in your case, it might be they're in a particular country for a rep who's in that country. And then they have a certain threshold in terms of employee count or something of that nature. And then there's a certain number, kind of a size of that target book. And you mentioned in passing, Will, like the idea of kind of setting that size of the target book. And that's pretty critical because the idea behind dynamic books is that you want to fix the target size of the book based on how many accounts reps can effectively be working at any given point in time. So you don't have hoarding like you have in a more Wild West model. So You know, we work together a bit on that. I'd love to hear, you know, how you all think about defining the target book size for different roles. So I just kind of love to hear kind of the thought process behind that. How do you arrive at 120 accounts, for example?
Yeah, so we have like the expected activity of a rep. So it would be 100 emails a day, and let's say 50 calls. And then we're doing some calculations based on like okay, the number of emails that they should send to an account, the number of calls, and we're dividing this, and this gives us a number. So we're at the stage where we need to tweak this, and we are testing this internally. So we have a smaller team based on, let's say, corporate accounts, or what we consider corporate accounts. And we're going to be looking to introduce capacities there. So the way forward that we're going to do this is we will give them more accounts that they can work realistically. And then we're going to be looking at the number of activities and then hopefully find some kind of match in the middle. And then once we've got that, we'll do the same for the different target books or the different regions. Because again, one thing that we're quite conscious of is different countries have completely different needs. So the target books will accommodate that. And we'll have different capacities depending on who they are. So we'll be able to get more granular with targets and then results, and then just distribute it out. And then we'd love to get to a stage where like when a rep is sending an account back, so rather than us doing this manually or like through dynamic books, we're just switching the account straight away. So we just have the rep say, okay, they don't want to work it, but they'd have to give a reason. Comes back, and then it just sends another one out.
Yeah, that swapping behavior is something that I think is, when you really want to get real time with dynamic books, that's, you want to implement that. You know, a rep can return an account based on some disposition, and then have a new account, you know, that fits their target book immediately delivered to them. And so that sort of return and single account distribution is, you know, think of that as like a swapping process. So it sounds like that's where you all are headed.
Like we're just there. So we've got like the dynamic books working. We're able to do the different campaigns. And now it's just like reeling in the number of accounts, because some people have thousands of them. Or not, they have like 1,500. So it's just bringing this in, and then just working everything.
Right. So Marcos, I'm curious, you know, we've been talking about implementing the process at kind of a low level in terms of like the mechanics of the, you know, exact number of accounts and all of those sorts of things. From a sales leadership level, what's been the response? What does a sales leader care about when it comes to thinking about this type of model versus, say, a geographic model?
Yeah, I mean, what they care about is conversion rates. So they're really interested to see our conversion rates on things. And our initial rollout, we started learning some things. We had a really low conversion rates in terms of total account to an actual total accounts that we were distributing to an actual one deal. And with Gradientworks, we kind of realized, you know, we're actually giving, you know, our reps are holding too many accounts. They're not able to do as much outreach as we want them to do. And so that's kind of where, you know, as Will mentioned, we've kind of started to cut back on, you know, how many accounts we're distributing on a weekly basis, and things like that. So we, with Gradientworks, we noticed that in the conversion metrics that Will touched on, in terms of, you know, how many we're actually converting into an actual opportunity from this distribution process in terms of the total accounts our reps are holding. we've seen that go up, and that's because we're targeting the right businesses with this book builder, and we're putting them into the hands of the SDRs to actually go do something. And with that, I'll say our sales team is like, great, how can we get this to our reps?
Right.
And so now we've had to kind of deal with the process of feeding more mouths, and and how do we get more of the right businesses to the rest of the sales team. And so I think that's, with us, that's a good problem to have, to know
Right.
that, hey, we put in a process that our SDR team has adopted. It's done great things so far, and we hope for it to do even greater things in the future as we start to fine tune it and kind of clear all the weeds that we had, where we weren't able to actually see what are the real problems that are causing us low conversion metrics. What are the real problems that are causing us from getting the number of meetings into the hands of sales reps that we've benchmarked for the month, for the quarter, for the year. And with this book builder, we were kind of able to kind of remove that, or kind of hone in on some of the problems. So we were able to hone in on that we were giving too many companies to SDRs. We needed to start to pull back on some of that. We were able to hone in on the right businesses to reach out to. Hey, we're having better success here than we are in other areas, and we were able to kind of do that at a quicker pace, higher volume, which are always the key words and phrases that
Right.
leadership loves to hear on. And so with that, I think the greatest compliment to the process, the success of the process, is when you have we roll it out for SDR, when we have the sales team coming to us and saying, hey, how do we get this into the hands of our sales reps? I think that's the biggest compliment as an ops person that you can receive, is how do we duplicate this process for my team, from your managers and from your end users. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we were looking at in terms of what we expected to hear from leadership.
Right. And I think in the case study that we published with you all, I mean, the results that I was super excited to see was 16% increase in meetings set from the SDR team, a 20% increase in the number of accounts that were being touched, and then all while reducing the amount of kind of day-to-day effort overhead of like managing accounts that the reps had. I'm curious, with that, as you all think about, you've touched on it a few times, kind of how you want to tune this going forward. It sounds like maybe there's some excitement and demand from the rest of the organization to deploy this for some of the other sellers. But Will, what do you think are the biggest opportunities now that you've got the process in place to make it better?
Yeah, and just to elaborate on like the statistics, so from the SDR team alone, 40% of the meetings are coming from dealt leads.
Okay.
So it's quite a good chunk of them. But yeah, so moving forward, as Marco said, we have a lot of the other AE managers coming to us. So it's a good problem to have. Like you said, when I started, I was dealing out, I think, 1,500 accounts a month. I'm currently at 9,000. And then if we have the AE team come on board, we're probably looking at like 13,000 a month. I'm incredibly happy not to do this in an Excel spreadsheet.
Sure.
And yeah, so moving forward, what we'd like to do is release it to the AE team. So we're having basically the whole organization using this. We'd like to, when we're reaping or dishing out the accounts and reaping them, we'd like to have like a group mentality where they're fixing the data as well. So that's one thing that's quite good, because when you reap an account, you can say, okay, you have to fill in this information, because if they're sending it back because it's bad data or something like that, we can collect all of this information, and it's easier to enrich it again. So we'd like to get all of this cycle working, and obviously we'd love to have more meetings come from here and more MRR.
Mhm.
That's the end goal. But there's lots of benefit to it. So from the SDR side, we can see that it's given them structure,
Mhm.
which I think is the most important thing, especially from their perspective, because before they weren't really focusing on anything. So
Mhm.
they have their mind, okay, like I need to source some accounts and then I'll call them and then I'll send some emails and I'll source. And it was all kind of mixed and matched. And yeah, the results weren't there. And
Mhm.
then with the statistics, you said, okay, like the number of accounts worked is going up, the number of calls is going up. This was all in conjunction with the sales managers.
Mhm.
So we're like, okay, you're getting these 50 accounts on Monday. The sales managers know this, the SDRs know this. And once they get it, they kind of plan what they need to do. So
Mhm.
they go into their LinkedIn, they put them into cadences and they start working on them. So obviously not all of the accounts are, let's say, people that they can reach out to.
Mhm.
I would like to get this at, let's say, 70% of the accounts are people who could potentially buy from us. But that's just more learning from our side. Um, but yeah, the structure's there, they know what to do and they have their days planned. So, and it's all kind of built around these dynamic books because they know, okay, I'm getting this account, like I need to do this, I need to clean them up, and just get ready for the week ahead. And
Mhm.
then if we could introduce this to the AE team, so they're like, okay, I've got these accounts, I don't know, on a monthly basis, for example, then they know at the beginning of the month they can work on it and they need to do, I don't know, 25 a week or whatever number that will be. So there's lots of structure around that. Um, and everyone else can just kind of buy into it. And once you've got the buy-in, everyone just wants it to work.
Mhm.
So that's one real nice thing. And my aim is, yeah, have everyone using this, everyone on the same page, doing the same stuff. And then at the end of the day, the company can only benefit.
Awesome. Well, we're just about at time, but I wanted to ask one question. Maybe I'll ask each of you in turn. I'll start with Marcos. I mean, Marcos, I know you've used sort of variations on this model in the past. What would be the one biggest piece of advice you would give an organization that was considering moving to a dynamic books model? And I'll ask Marcos to answer that first. We'll ask you the same question, so you got a second to think about it.
Uh, yeah, I think it's who I'm telling. So if it's a someone on the sales team, I would say this is something. If you don't know that you need this, then you're already behind the eight ball. This is something. This is definitely something that you and your team will be beneficial for you. It's going to be able to. Everyone's wants the biggest deal, the big deal, the big number, have the
Mhm.
big quarter, things like that. Um, but what I've seen from the most successful sales reps in the years I've worked with sales teams is your your best sales reps are your consistent ones, and they're the ones who can get to quota in a variety of fashion. They can get to quota by bringing in the big deal. They can get to quota by bringing in a bunch of small deals.
Mhm.
And those are always the best reps. And those are the reps you want on your team and to build your team. Um, but what that means is, those small deals, the businesses that you're selling to, and the big deals, the businesses of the big deals, those are two different types of companies, two different sales process, two different ways of selling, and that the age of which it takes to get those deals across the lines are going to be different. Your smaller deals are probably going to be a lot quicker to bring in, and your large deals are going to be a lot longer to bring in. But those are also the ones that your board's going to care about, your investors, your CEOs. Those are probably the big ones. Are going to be are what is usually looked at the most. But you need to have a nice. You need to give your sales reps an opportunity to kind of bring in both ends of the spectrum. And so I think having that, having a way to deliver those to your team is key. You don't want your reps to be sitting there saying, if you have a 6-week sales cycle, 1 month your rep is at 0 and the next month they're at 120% of their quota. That doesn't look good from a month-to-month basis. So I would say, to a sales member, you probably need this if you don't know it already. From an ops person, this is probably something that you've seen already, and it's a problem that it looks easy to solve on paper, and it's extremely difficult to do on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis. And so that's the biggest, those are the two things I would say to those people. And for an ops person, I mean, what better way to have a tool to kind of do it for you, where you don't have to manage it as hands-on as you need to, but should you want to, that's available. And so I think for us, that's kind of what worked best with this product, this feature that GradingWorks has released is, having the ability to kind of manipulate, to constantly evolve and tweak our distribution process and the businesses that we're having our team reach out to, and then make sure that it's constantly evolving as things change. Our Q4 goals are different than our Q3 goals. The businesses we want to scale and grow as customers is different than what we wanted at the beginning of the year, and so we have to adapt constantly. And if you're having to do this on a manual basis, it's just not scalable, and it's impossible to do. And we've scaled really quickly here at Omnipresent, and so luckily we've had the tools to kind of help us adapt to those challenges.
Got it. Well, Will, what's your 60 seconds of advice for somebody who's thinking about adopting dynamic books?
So I would say this would just give you a solid foundation, and you are setting up the team to succeed. For example, if you're not taking the accounts back, there's less of a region for them to work. So with all of this, you're giving them a higher chance to succeed, the company to, let's say, make more money, and just bring this structure and everything around it. So I'd say it's the foundation of the SDR team at the moment. It can potentially be the foundation or one of them for the AE team, and it just brings everything together. And with this foundation, we're able to pivot so we can test new things. So let's say we are more reactive, proactive, sorry, not reactive. So we're more proactive to the market or to what's going on. Whereas before we're more like reactive, so we just wait for it to happen. But now we can go out, we can test stuff. If it doesn't work, fair enough, we just put our hands up and say it doesn't work. We've also got like the target books to go back to because we know that works. So it's given us that, and it's just something that we can constantly build on. And yeah, it helps everything, like the SDR teams, the structure, the data quality. Yeah, so that would be what I would have to say.
All right. Well, thank you both for sharing some of the challenges you saw, the process for getting there, and and what you're looking to do in the future. So really appreciate the team from Omnipresent here today sharing this. So thank you all very much, Marcos and Will. Really appreciate the time and the insight.
Thanks. Happy to talk.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.